Okay, so next up, final speaker for today, but not last, but definitely not least, we've got Danielle Elsener from DECODE. Danielle, are you online? That I can see you. Yes, hello, Danielle. Welcome this
Hello, thank
afternoon.
you.
Thank you very much for being with us. So I won't let them listen to me anymore. That's enough of me, but I'll give the forum to you. You can share your screen and introduce yourself. Thank you very much.
Great, will do. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here. I'm glad I can wrap up the day. Thank you, time difference. I get to be at the end. I'm coming at you from Brooklyn, New York right now. We're at the DECODE MFG manufacturing space, which I'll turn my computer around and show you in a little bit. But for a little bit of background around me, my name is Danielle Elsener. I am a zero waste systems designer. And today I'm just going to share a little bit with you around the information and context around zero waste design and its applications in today's design world, and more specifically, how I approach it. So a little bit more about me. I've been practicing zero waste design for over 10 years now. I think it's at 11. And I've really dedicated my life's work to solving this like insanely complex puzzle of zero waste in the fashion industry. It's two things that don't really go with each other. And it's just been this really inescapable niche that I discovered when I was in my BA level at Savannah College of Art and Design. I really love puzzle solving and complex problems, so it ended up becoming my perfect niche that I haven't been able to escape out of. I put my practice to use in a lot of different ways, but the main three pillars are design, education, and production. Design through actual pattern work, which is the part that I initially fell in love with, and then over time, it came to be that these other components were necessary in order for zero waste design to make an actual difference in the industry. So moving into the world of education with developing design tools, mentoring, lecturing, and then production, which is the most recent arm that's been added to the DECODE zero waste family, which is the manufacturing space that I'm in right now. I like showing this map of kind of what the world of zero waste design looks like, just to show that there's a lot more than just the pattern making. I'm going to share at least one project from each of these buckets, from design, education, and production. But I really enjoy starting off this way just to show that there is a lot that it can branch into. I operate under the notion that waste is a design flaw and that design can solve the problem. It's great that we can go retroactively and capture waste and recycle it and reclaim it and reuse it. But at the end of the day, designing waste into product is absolutely insane. And that's where we need to put the majority of our efforts going forward. As I'm sure many of you already know, an average of 15% of fabric is wasted at the cutting stage, just when you're laying out patterns on fabric. This is actually a pretty low estimate. It's closer to 25 as the average. And when you get into the more luxury fabrics or luxury companies, stripe matching and print matching makes it more like 40% waste, which is absolutely astronomical. So this is the 15%, 25% waste that we're trying to design out of apparel product. It's estimated that 60 billion meters square of fabric is wasted annually. That's mostly numbers from the global north, and that's probably a huge underestimate, but it's a starting point anyway. And I've been trying to find the right number to share like how big of a volume that is. And the closest I found was from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, where it's basically a rubbish truck full of clothes ending up in the landfill every second. So that's the about equivalent of what 60 billion meters of fabric wasted is. So if we look for the origin of the issue of waste in the design system, you could think it comes from inefficient production facilities or the textile manufacturing process or something, but you can actually see that optimization just comes far too late in the process. How can we fit together curves and these squared angled shapes when they haven't been designed to fit together perfectly? So it becomes obvious that if something needs to be changed in the design system, it needs to happen all the way at the beginning, which is where we come in. And just to level set, when I talk about zero waste design, I'm specifically talking about 100% pattern efficiency, where the creation of a product generates no waste in the production of that garment. So there's lots of definitions now, and it's really interesting trying to kind of understand what zero waste design means to everyone. But for us, it means, of course, using 100% pattern efficiency, plus all of these other zero waste terminologies like not wasting water, using good fabrics, small production cycle, those kind of things. So here I have an example of like a traditional t-shirt layout with a zero waste t-shirt layout that I had designed. It's just a quick little example to show what we mean when using 100% lay plan efficiency. So just throwing that up there for a moment. One of the most important things you can do as a designer is deciding what you stand for. And so the moniker that I've been working under for the last, like, who knows how long now, is DECODE. And that kind of filters into these pillars of design always being first and foremost: experimentation, collaboration, obsession, dissection, and education. So any work I take on needs to fulfill each of these pillars in some aspect. So as I'm looking on taking on new work, whether it's clients or designing something for myself or for someone else, I need to make sure that all of these values are hit in some capacity. I've also worked on developing new ways of problem solving and new ways of working around creating garments, whether it's developing new rules, kind of breaking that box that everyone normally designs into. Designing backwards is the main focus of zero waste design, starting at the end with optimization and working back from there. And like I said earlier, solving the impossible problem of waste in the fashion industry. So with any other designer, I really like seeing their sketchbook. So I included a little snippet of mine. As you can see, I don't do a ton of actual garment sketching. I do sketch a lot in pattern form and create formulas. And I use a lot of color and shape to try to develop a more graphic message behind what zero waste design means, because it is really difficult to actually explain to someone who doesn't work in the fashion industry. It can be a bit complicated. So I try to use visual vehicles to shepherd the story along a bit quicker. So here's a snapshot of some samples of work that I developed when I was at the Royal College of Art in London for 2 years. I just graduated in 2020. These garments I'm showing you right now are actually only prototypes. The final garments were never made because, you know, school was shut down, that whole good story. But it doesn't actually matter because these are about the concept anyway, and sharing what the visual aesthetics of what zero waste design can be. I used a lot of, again, graphic storytelling, of using the concept of the circle and the square. You know, circling the square is the impossible math problem. So I liken that to zero waste design in the industry. But as you can see, a lot of these shapes disappear and reappear in other areas. And when you look at these garments next to the full layout of what the pattern was initially, you can start to see that there's more going on behind the pattern than you may think. I'm going to go a little bit into a few denim specific pieces, since we're in the world of denim, to be fair. So here's just a few little snapshots of my sketchbook pages and a few development images of developing a zero waste denim shirt and pants. This was also during my MA. And this is something that was also used to develop zero waste pattern masters, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. But I just really enjoy sharing the process. It's definitely one of the things that's most important in my work, being able to share how you actually execute on things. And with zero waste design, you're able to really amp up certain details. Like, so with zero waste design, you use every inch of fabric, which includes the edges. And of course, with denim, you have beautiful selvage. So why not amp that up? And anywhere that selvage appears in the garment, it helps storytell again, like I was saying. So you can make some really interesting details come to light. And these are just a few images of the final pieces. I really enjoy amping up the seam lines that end up coming out of the zero waste patterns. So on the right, you can see some of the garments are turned inside out. Everything was bound with cotton tape, and you can see, again, the visual story of how the patterns came to be. As I said, I really enjoy sharing process. So in all of my presentations, I share a lot of images like this, but also it just goes to show that the process of making is intricately linked to the actual final garments that come out. So I do a lot of testing of materials and execution of prints and graphics and things of that nature. And you can see like in the middle image, this decode that fades away over time. I was experimenting with sublimating on cotton, which you don't normally do. But my one, like sublimation is a great practice, but it does have paper. So I was like, okay, well, what if we keep reusing this paper and keep sublimating over and over until it runs out, and then use the paper as a pattern for something later. So just, you know, that kind of thinking and really going a little bit more into the story behind why certain decisions are made is a lot of fun for me. Okay, so going into the world of education, I really enjoy developing design tools to help people kind of break out of the traditional design box. While I was at RCA, I developed these pattern masters, which I mentioned briefly. So basically the idea is that I give you this tool plus a set of instructions, and it would allow you to create a zero waste garment. The one pictured here is for zero waste tee. The idea is that you can start with, like, you know, the instructions in the tool and be able to make exactly what I have given you, but also you can use it as the starting point for other zero waste garments in the future. You know, the pattern master, the iconic pattern master, has become rather ubiquitous with the fashion industry and fashion education. It was developed in the 70s and hasn't changed since. And, you know, the way that we're approaching design and the way that the world is adapting, why aren't we adapting the tools that we use to educate people who are going to be designing the future? So that was a little bit of the idea behind these tools. The idea is that the zero waste patterns turn into tools that turn fabric into zero waste garments. Here's an example of one of the short pattern masters. This is what I often use to teach how the pattern masters work. It's one of the really easy ones. You only have to place this 3 times. I give you dimensions and where to place, and then you just trace it and cut it out, which is really easy. The way that these ended up getting developed was actually because I was really tired of printing the full lay plans of my zero waste patterns, and as a broke student, didn't want to keep spending money on printing. So I ended up finding the key areas in a pattern that you actually needed to print, and not print the blank space in between. So I would just, you know, use an A4 and print out one important part, measure out to the next important part, and do another A4 there. And so I developed a series of 8 pattern masters. Only 6 are shown here, but they're based on different garments. So like you have a tee, a short, a button down, a trouser, and these are still a work in progress. I really want to develop them to be more garment block specific. So like a knitwear block and an outerwear block, and make them incredibly size inclusive. Right now, I think there are 6 sizes, but there should be way more than that for all of these. So anyway, just acknowledging that it can still progress. In making these, I did a lot of workshops where I tested out how the pattern masters actually worked, and if they made sense, and if my talking about it made sense, or if I was just stuck in my own head. I've developed a series of 5 different courses to kind of break this box of design. 2 of them are actually have been done. The zero waste pattern master workshop and then the 15% design thinking workshop have both been executed. And the 15% workshop I hosted went really interestingly. It was about kind of, if you're designing something new for the first time, you only have a certain amount of information you have to include in a new design, and then everything else can be kind of free. I won't go into it completely at the moment, but these are a few of the outcomes of the workshop. Everyone was given the same prompt, and something completely different came out for everyone, which was really cool and definitely the point. And then going into production, all of these, you know, design, education, everything has kind of led to where we are right now. As I said, I opened DECODE MFG, which is the manufacturing arm of everything that I'm doing here in Brooklyn. We opened up in October of 2021, so it's only been about 6 months. And the idea is that we're the first zero waste manufacturer, basically. I not only design the patterns, but I can test them very quickly in our production floor and actually manufacture bulk. We're pretty small, so the bulk is not like a ton of units, but it's super exciting because it's a really short feedback loop, and you can find problems really quickly and get really quick feedback from the people sewing. So I not only produce, you know, DECODE garments, which are, you know, I usually stick to staples like tees, hoodies, pants, things like that, just as a baseline. So we manufacture our own in-house product, but then we also manufacture for other brands. I do some consultancy work. There are some fun denim consultancy projects coming out in the next couple of months or so. So keep your eyes out for that. But yeah, it's been a really great learning process of doing the manufacturing end of things. You're usually either on the design side or the manufacturing side, and doesn't often cross over. So it's been a huge learning curve, to be fair. But yeah, it's super exciting. And if anyone's ever in Brooklyn or New York, feel free to come by. We actually just moved up 3 floors. So now we are Manhattan facing, which is very exciting. And I'm going to turn around my computer really quick so that you can see. So I'm going to stop my video. Oops, I'm going to stop my share. And just turn around the computer really quick so you can see. But this is where we are right now. We've doubled our size. We have a few people working in there, but yeah, that's
doing to wave. Amazing. What a journey you're on. So I've got a question in the chat for you saying, super cool. They really enjoyed it, how you're using design to eliminate waste. And a question about, what about mock-ups? Do you use 3D programs to test out garments instead of samples?
Yeah, definitely. I use a lot of Clo3D. I actually design my patterns in Illustrator, which is completely wrong, and everyone yells at me for it, but it's the way that makes sense in my brain. So I design them in Illustrator, import them into Clo, and then do the actual like fitting to eliminate some sampling waste. Yeah.
And I've got a question about what's the main drawback to zero waste currently, or maybe the challenges. Is it fabric widths are a main issue? They were saying that Mohsin was saying he finds that a challenge. What's your challenge?
Yeah, fabric widths are definitely a challenge. I would say it's yeah, consistency from all partners involved. So if you like, everything that's made has like has tolerance. So if a fabric comes in like half an inch longer, that's within tolerance, but then that does like throw off the pattern. So at that point you have to decide, is it worth months and months of redesigning, or is it like you find an extra use for that half an inch that comes in? There was an example of an industry project where exactly that happened. One of my friends is working with a French brand, and the fabric came in 2 cm too wide, and it was like a 9-month project, and they didn't want to redo the whole thing because the fabric was 2 cm too wide. So they ended up using that strip from the edge to tie up the bundles in the factory, and then reused it that way. So yeah, there are some compromises that end up happening in the real world of like getting things made. But also I always have to clarify that like making steps towards zero waste design, and even if it ends up being minimal, it's better than, you know, just standard like lay plan, the
traditional way.
Design. Yeah,
absolutely. And you've made a huge growth, really. I mean, graduating quite recently, really, and then COVID, etc. And then now you've got your own manufacturing plant there and company. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, given the speed you're developing now?
Okay, well, let's see. So the goal is that we become the go-to for anything zero waste. So right now we do cut and sew apparel, but why not, you know, if people want to even branch into the world of knitwear, why wouldn't we do that? Or like furniture design, why wouldn't we do that? You know, there's such a bigger world of like product that's being made all the time,
so
all around you.
Knitting machines, when you say knitwear, would that be
why not?
Why not?
I mean, so knitwear is already inherently kind of a zero waste process. So everyone always asks, why don't I just do knitwear? And it's because that problem has already been solved, really. So we are focusing on cut and sew. And my specialty has kind of become production zero waste design, where it can be repeated at scale. And that's a lot of the consultancy jobs that I do, where larger brands want to do better and want to go to a zero waste methodology, but just don't know how. And I have a lot of experience from, you know, the corporate world. Before I went to grad school, I was in the industry. So I know some of the problems, I know the vernacular and like how to speak to lots of different levels. So it's so interesting.
Nice, you're on a great journey. Danielle, thank you so much. And obviously my travel list is getting bigger because we've got Brooklyn, we're going to visit Candiani. I'm very excited about this. Thank you very much for drawing our day to conclusion.